Hi, everyone. Welcome to Imperfect Parenting from the Confident Communicator. I am joined by my very dear friend and business partner, Seema Mehta, and I am Deepma Jadeja, both of us co-founders of the Confident Communicator. We have an amazing guest today, but before I introduce him, I wanted to answer a question that I've got repeatedly. And that is, why did we call this series that we've started Imperfect Parenting? A lot of you have written in and asked, aren't we supposed to try to become better? Why are we celebrating imperfection? Aren't we supposed to try to strive towards perfection? And so I wanted to just answer that question very quickly. The reason we named our series Imperfect Parenting is because our striving towards perfection tends to create a lot of stress and unhappiness and anxiety in us. Let me give you a quick example. If your spouse or your partner is not reciprocating the level of perfection that you're putting into the relationship, what does it lead to? Anger, frustration, stress. If your employer does not give you that promotion, in spite of you trying to be the perfect employee, what does that lead to? Unhappiness, anxiety. If as a parent, you are reading all the right articles, all the books, watching all the videos, and trying to push yourself towards perfection, where does that lead you? It leads you to putting the same level of stress on the children to become perfect. And what happens with that is children start worrying and start developing a fear of failure. And that's what we want to avoid. If children are afraid of failure, they are not going to take risks. They are not going to try anything new. They are not going to be okay with not doing it right the first time, because you've put this pressure of perfection on them. And that's the reason why we named our series Imperfect Parenting, not because we're celebrating per se imperfection, but because we want to celebrate each person's uniqueness as being and making them perfectly imperfect. So without much ado, I want to introduce our esteemed guest who follows the same, not just in his professional life, but in his personal life as well. He has two amazing daughters who he has raised with gentle parenting. Girish Panikkar is a speaker, author, and certified parenting coach. He has also been certified in NLP, cognitive behavioral therapy, life coaching, and is the charter founder member of Enneagram Society of India. That's quite a mouthful. So we have a very esteemed guest.
And not to forget, he's the first man who has come onto our series, The Imperfect Parenting. And I think in that arena, this is probably the perfect guest that we've had. So welcome, Girish. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And no, the way you brought in the imperfection or imperfect parenting, I think that's the way we need to look at life as such. No, not strive for perfection, because you put undue pressure on everybody. And absolutely, delighted to know that you are doing that, which I also imbibe in my life as well.
Wonderful. Girish, you can follow Girish on his social media handles, where he is called the Parent Alchemist. So let's ask him that first question. What is a parent alchemist, Girish?
Okay. And now, see, in all my interaction with parents, most of the parents told me, can you do something so that you change certain behavior of my child, right? My child is not studying, my child is not eating, my child is throwing tantrums, my child has mobile addiction. Can you change that? Now, my work is entirely not with children, but with parents, because if they change their responses to whatever children do, children's behavior automatically changes. So I bring in change in parents by how they interact or how they respond to any kind of an action that the child does. So I change parents, which in turn bring changes within the children. That's why I would like to call myself a parent alchemist. more than calling a parent coach. No, parent.
And that's actually very, very interesting that you say that, because I remember, I mean, as a parent, one of the first things, as soon as the baby is out, the first thing that the parent does is take care of their child. They help them talk, walk, eat, experience so many things until they start becoming able and independent. So there are so many different stages that kids go through, and therefore the training of the parent becomes very critical. So I think it's a very apt name that you have given yourself, and I appreciate that you do that.
Absolutely. So Girish, tell us, let's jump right in. So you say you're a parent alchemist, you're a parent coach. What is coaching as opposed to, sometimes I wonder, I wish I'd met you earlier in my parenting journey, because I'm wondering, I think I was my children's teacher more than I was their coach. So what is the difference between teaching, instructing, and coaching as you see it?
See, both has its importance, right? When a child comes to you and says, no, that the child is not good in something, no, some particular subject, and you feel you are able to do it better, there you take the role of a teacher or a coach, right? But there are certain places, as the child grows, the child will definitely be confused on what to do, right? Yeah. There, my knowledge is not going to help the child. There, I need to be a coach wherein I trigger the child to find solutions on their own. And that's the role of a coach.
Correct.
Because when the child is at crossroads, your solution is not going to work. The child only knows what the child is undergoing. And as a parent, my job is to help the child find solutions for the problem that the child is undergoing.
So what you're saying is that in a difficult situation, we need to imbibe that sense of resilience in the child, so that if they are facing a difficult challenge or a situation, they can come up with a solution themselves, because the parent has played the role of a coach. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Because if the child has a problem, your solutions will not work.
Correct.
Because your experience which worked for you, but this experience is completely different. Now, when you're going to give a solution for a problem which is the child's own, it doesn't work.
Actually, we had a guest a couple of episodes ago. Her name was Aanchal Kejriwal. She was she does reorganizing and helping people decluttering.
Yeah.
And she told us something very interesting, that if you are asking your child, because the conflict that parents and children have, it starts with clean your room, right? It always starts with that. So she said, if you make your bed, clean your room, put the mess away. The thing that happens is you have a vision of what that child's room should look like, but it doesn't work for them. That is not their solution. They have to find their own solution, is what she told us in that episode. And it kind of resonates with what you're saying, that while it may work for you in your mind, it doesn't really work for the child. So how do we distinguish this role of us being a parent and a coach? I mean, it's a little confusing. Can you separate this out for us?
It is not always that we play the role of a coach. My mission is to help a parent become a coach and a counselor. See, there are times when the children are completely low, depressed, anxious, not knowing what to do. Correct? And there the parent has to play the role of a counselor. And what is the role of the counselor? How do you help the child to help the child to tell whatever is there within the child? Right? So that's the role of a counselor, not the role of a coach. Coach is helping you find solutions on your own, and the counselor is helping you bring out whatever is there within yourselves. So these are two roles, right? If that was a question that you asked, if I've answered.
Absolutely. It's very important to make that distinction, because so someone will say, but I got to be the parent, I've got to be the parent and I got to act like a parent. I cannot be a coach. But I think if you think about it from the long-term perspective, being a coach is very, very critical. And at what stage in your mind does a parent become a coach? I mean, how do we transition, or how do we exchange this role of being a parent versus a coach? I mean, how do we do that?
One of the things also that we noticed, sorry to interrupt, but one of the things we've noticed in leadership communication and in a lot of our long-term courses, our parents often come to us and say, but how come he does what you tell him to do, but he's never listening to me? He never does what I ask him to do. And I think one of the things that we say is that we make them think that it was their idea. right? And so we are doing the coaching. Obviously we are coaches, we're not that child's parent, but because we're doing that, we're making them think it was their idea, they're far more open to doing the homework or the assignments or whatever it is that we're telling them to do. And I think that's what you're saying as well with the coaching and the counseling and the distinction.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one more thing, what we need to understand is, see, children always feel parents are the people who I can do whatever I want. That liberty is there. Right? I can do all the mischief in my home because it is my father and mother. Right? Now, this the parents need to understand that they are using this liberty only because we are the parents. Right? At that time, getting agitated and thinking why they are not listening to me without knowing what makes them listen is a problem what parents have to solve for themselves.
Correct.
Right. Very true.
That is so true. We have to, someone said once, and I don't remember who it was, but someone said that we have to provide that safe container for them to fail and for them to not listen and for them to kind of do quote unquote what we think are wrong things, with us, so that then they realize the consequences. So what do you think about that, Girish?
What makes parents think that children should listen to them? I put this question back.
That's a very, very, very good question you're asking.
That's a loaded question, though.
Why should a child listen to you just because you're the father or mother? Correct. Children happen to be born through you. Matter closed. Correct? Now, if every parent thinks, I'll quote in You Can Heal, Lowzy Hay. She made a beautiful statement. I don't know how far it is true, but this will bring a transformation change in anybody. You know what she says? She says, children actually choose parents. You know why? Because the children knows it is only under these parents that I can become whole. I can have the best of my lives. Right? So if parents think this is true, I'm not saying it is true, but even if we think that this is how life goes on, that children are choosing this father and mother because I can become the best child or become the best version of myself only under these people. Now, if parents even think this is true, they will try to grow themselves as the child grows, not make the child listen to what they think is right.
Right.
Now, am I as a parent doing something so that my child, my son or daughter is becoming the best version of themselves, not what I think is right for them?
Correct.
And there's a big very powerful distinction.
And there's a very big difference there, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
So then I would say then that what you're saying is coaching is very similar to therapy. And we have to become therapists of our children.
No, and also before that, I mean, when does the stage of coaching really start? I mean, at what stage of a child's life does a parent really become a coach?
See, there is no particular age you can say, but you can say start from the age of 6, 7, 8, when the child is slowly trying to become independent faster.
Correct.
Right? Because you'll find major change happening in any time from 7, 8 years. You'll find that every parent makes this complaint. Till she was in the 4th or 5th or the 3rd standard, he or she used to listen to everything and she was a wonderful child. Now
not listening.
And that's the shift. Now that is where you need to understand why is the child doing it. The child is trying to assert herself or himself. Right? That's how everybody tries to live. Now, when you're trying to put the child into your frame of what you think is right, it doesn't work. Then you trigger the child by asking.
I think once, just to kind of reiterate this point before you proceed, is that as parents, we need to be very good observers. Like when we start seeing the resistance has begun, there is a little bit of resistance. They're not exactly doing what they always used to do. When we ask them to do it, they would do it. And now the resistance is beginning. So as parents, I think the first step is for us to be observers, to see that now the assertiveness, the independence, I'm growing up stage has begun. And instead of being afraid of it or fighting it or getting into battles with the children, it is best for us to recognize that our time to wear the coach hat has come.
Has begun. Yes. Nicely rounded up. Yeah.
Because that's
because it becomes a power struggle, right? At that point, when they are trying to assert themselves and they're trying to become their own person, and you are saying, no, you need to up to now, I have been the most powerful person in your life, the biggest person in your life. So it has to continue forever.
Correct. Because see, if you ask in all our surveys that we did with parents, we asked parents, what would you like your child to be when the child is 25 years or something, right? When they're on their own. And the answers that we got are invariably same throughout. They said, I want my child to be good, right? I want my child to be independent. I want my child to make own decisions. I want them to live a happy life and be financially stable. This is across, these are the same things which have come, right?
Yeah.
Not a single parent told, I want my child to be the number one in school or the head of a company or owning 3 cars and big bungalows. Not a single parent told. Now you may ask me, where is the problem happening then?
Yes.
Now, if intention of every parent is the same.
Yes.
Your day-to-day interactions with your child, are you helping them become independent? Are you helping them take decisions on their own? That is, like you said, make mistakes and learn from mistakes, or are you doing everything for them? Right?
Correct.
You want them to be good and happy. Are you, as father and mother, husband and wife, depicting happiness in whatever you do? Right? Or is your discussions only transactional? How much marks you got? Are you doing good? Who are the people you interacted with?
So well said. Yeah, well said.
And your intentions do not match, they will not match. And that is why clashes happen.
Can you say that one more time, Girish? One more time. I love that. I love what you just said. What doesn't match? Can you say that one more time?
The intention of all parents is good.
Yes.
But it is not matching with the actions that you're doing on a daily basis.
Okay.
And that's why clashes happen.
Yeah.
No.
Actually, that's such an aha moment. Intention and action are not matching. And that's why the parents and the children get into a fight, they get into a struggle, and we all worry and we get stressed, and we make such a big deal about every small thing, and everything turns into a battle. And I hear so many parents say, you know what, I got to pick my battles. And I think that I got to pick my battles is actually not necessary at all if we can make this distinction very clear, right?
Yeah.
Very well said. Very well said.
And if your intentions are matched with actions, then your clashes is automatically decrease. Because you're becoming transaction with every conversation is only transactional.
Yes.
And that is not leading to what the child wants, right? The child is expecting something else from you.
Let's give an example to make this a little bit more clear. So you said that, most parents want their children to be happy. That's what all parents want. Right? We want our children to be happy, healthy, successful, do what they want to do in their life and be independent, all of those things. So that's the intention. Yeah. And then the action is, okay, but your marks are not good enough. You didn't get a good job. Why are you eating so much? Why are you putting on so much weight? So all of these things are clashing right here because the intention is this, but we are saying something else. And that's what creates the confusion. But then is it wrong? I'm sure people will ask, is it wrong for the parent to say, but I want my child to do well in their exams. I want them to do, because that's the measure of success in the world today, where if you do well in your school, then you will become a successful person. So how should the parents look at this aspect? Because it's an important question. A lot of the parents are so academically inclined. While we agree with what you are saying, and we've been saying that in every single episode, let's focus on who your child is rather than what you want them to become. So can you kind of elaborate on that?
See, yeah. Every discussion, what every parent says is, unless you get very good marks in 10th, you'll not get into a very good college.
Yes.
Unless you be in the top 5 percentile, you'll not get into your higher studies. And then you'll not get into a very good job. And then you will not be happy. Finally, thing is, then you'll not be happy.
Yeah.
Because that's the number line. Yeah.
Now, if both these parents, they were also extremely good in studies, academically good, doing everything, but they are not internally happy, the child knows it. You know that you're going for a work. If you know you're coming back stressed, you're shouting at everybody, you're not happy, but still you did all these things. And the child will also give you examples saying, I know so many people who were average in school and they are doing good. And they are happy. They have all the statistics. Because in one of my workshops, one mother asked me, 7-year-old child says, Mommy, I want to be a dropout. The mother is worried because somebody says dropouts are successful.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's how they're speaking to you now. So the child is seeing everything that you're doing. your actions, your behaviors is right in front of the child. And no, your child is holding a mirror onto you every second. Every
So
second.
true.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah,
What
yeah.
so is that, are you happy with what mirror you're showing to your child?
So
Correct.
how do we then, I mean, let's then talk about how do we become a coach? What can we do as parents to become that coach who matches the intention with the action, who is there in the sort of the periphery or the boundary of a child's life's progress, where we are sort of nudging them a little bit, but we are not telling them what to do, or we are not creating their own vision. So what can we do as coaches, and how do we become that coach?
Because happiness, we have defined happiness as that very linear number line, right? But like you said, the children are watching what you do and who you are rather than what you're saying. So I'm parroting that, oh, I'm the happiest person in the world because I got 98 out of 100 in whatever. But they're seeing that I'm not really happy, right? Or that 98% has not made me who I am today. The other thing that my children say often, this is just an example, very often they say is, Mama, one of the biggest dangers, I think, of parenting is allowing grandparents into the periphery, because the grandparents will tell the truth. So my mother has, and my father has told my children, that I was a pretty average kind of a student. I wasn't like this 98, 99%. So they often have come back to me and said, Mama, you were average and you're doing what you love. You finally figured out what you love and you're doing it. So we want to do that too. And I think that's what you're saying, right? Is kind of what Seema said too, is be on the periphery, nudge them into it, but don't define happiness for them. Let them define happiness, right?
Everything. Don't define anything for them. It is their life.
Yes.
Everything is, if you have to look into the common mistakes, what every parent does, right? I'll tell you what are the common mistakes so that we'll get an idea of where we need to draw the line. Okay.
Sure.
So the first mistake is parents thinking, I know everything that is good for my child. First mistake. The truth is, we know nothing.
Yes.
And when we know, only when you say that I know nothing, you're going to look at your child completely dispassionately and without any judgment. This has to go into our heads very clearly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Number two is, I want my unfulfilled dreams to be fulfilled by my child.
Yes. Yes.
Common mistake. Yes.
Yes.
So I
was
not
able
to do this. I was not able to get such a good education. I did not have it best, but I want my child to go into the best and do. And I wanted to be this. I couldn't. I want my child to fulfill. Number two mistake. That is your dream. It goes with you, not with your child.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Number three, parents today being extremely busy, they are having a kind of a guilt that I'm not able to spend time with my child. So let me give everything what the child asks.
And then we say they are very entitled. Yeah, because we are giving them everything.
Yeah. Yes. You start, no, see, I did not have anything. I am giving you everything. Still, you're not able to do what I did.
Yes.
Okay.
I have heard myself say that.
I have said that too. I have provided everything. What else do you want? Yes.
I've said there are parents who say, I have sacrificed my job to take care of you. No, quit my job only to see that you do it. And why can't you understand that? And why can't you study it? That's your problem.
That's dangerous. Yeah, that's a
and that's your problem. Yeah, correct.
Yes. And the other fourth mistake is, the old parents' ego. They want their child to have the best. And when they go to school, they want my child to have the best of things, the best of the mobile, the best of the branded dress. It is your ego, which is again being put on the child.
My child went to this college. That ego, branded college my child went to. So that's the parent's ego. Correct.
It's the bragging rights. No, we want those bragging rights. In fact, I was reading an article which was so interesting, Girish, and I'm sure you've read it too, is parents trying to create their children into prodigies, child prodigies. So my child won the spelling bee. My child is a math genius at the age of 10, or he's a grandmaster. She's a grandmaster of chess at the age of 12, or whatever it might be. And the article that I was reading, there was a study that followed these child prodigies over their growing up years and into adulthood and into their professions. And the interesting thing was, it all averaged out. They were all completely average adults. So why then, if we know that, why put that pressure on them becoming prodigies when ultimately at the end of, in their 30s or 40s, they're going to be average. They're going to be like everyone else.
What was the intention? Reiterate, every parent, what was your intention? Was it to make him a prodigy? No. Independent decision makers, live his life, happy life, financially stable, not. That's your intention. So that's what I said. We have to have that intention clearly written, and then when you're interacting, see whether it is matching my intention.
But the common line that most parents say is that, I am very experienced. I've gone through 25, 30 years of working life, and I am an adult. 25, 30 years I've been an adult, and I know how difficult it is. And, I think there is a lot of fear-driven conversation that happens between parents and children, because I have seen what can go wrong. I have seen that this can happen. If you don't do this, then this will happen. We constantly put this fear, this guilt, we dump all this on our children. So how do we kind of take a step back and be that coach that our children really need?
See, here you made a very valid point. You see, as the child is growing, right? And when they are supposed to take their decisions, with your experience, you can say, see, these are the choices available. Right?
Correct. That's the conversation.
Yes. This could be the consequence, and you are going to be completely responsible for this.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, most parents, they are taking responsibility for their child's every act onto them, which is wrong. I'll tell you one more statement which may blow out your minds, which has come from Screen Free Parenting. You know what he says? He says, parents are not responsible for their children. Your child may be getting 0 in school, maybe fighting with anybody, but you're not responsible for anything that they do. But you are responsible to how you react to them after.
Absolutely.
What is in your control? I am responsible to them for what I do to them. You're not responsible for whatever they do. Correct. But taking responsibility for whatever they do is bringing undue pressure on your head. And because of that, you make them do something so that they fall in line with whatever you want them to do.
Correct.
So true. In fact, Girish, you just gave us the title to our series today. Parents, you are not responsible for your children. You're responsible to your children.
Beautiful.
Yes. Yeah. Beautiful. Oh, that was lots of powerful stuff coming. I'm trying to remember everything and taking notes, but I think I'm going to watch this several times. So what's the way forward, Girish?
Way forward is very simple. Your children are not your property. Okay?
Yes.
You are there as a custodian to help them live a life which they feel is right. Right? Don't make a frame and say this is right and you fit into the frame. Simple example, now the online classes now, it is now put on children. Can we expect children to sit in front of an online class and listen? We can't. So my only request to parents, understand what the children are undergoing and let it be. We are forcing them to sit. We are forcing, they cannot. So understand that they cannot. At least you understand and you accept your child as he or she is. She will do things in the right manner. At least she'll not run away or jump away or go away somewhere else. That's my worry.
Correct.
I said every parent should know the art of counseling is for the simple reason. When I was doing my internship in Baptist, what baffled me was when children come along with parents and the doctor says the parents to wait outside, the child opens up so much to a doctor who they're meeting for the first time that the parents do not know. And this is wrong.
That happens even in our classes, in our communication classes, a lot of the kids talk to us about a lot of things and the parents are very surprised that they have revealed things like this that even the parents don't know or not, they didn't even know that they were bullied, or there's a lot of conversation that comes out in a very safe, because we create and provide that safe environment of coaching. And of course, it's easier for us because we are not their parents, but we do strive very hard. And I think we can replicate the same safe environment even at home, as a coach rather than as a parent. Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Yeah. So what
the child should do whenever they are happy, unhappy, something worse happening, dramatically bad things happening in their life, they should go to their parents. If that is not happening, then we have not lived the life, as a coach or counselor, forget that, or as a parent as well.
Correct.
Yes. Why are they hiding?
So
That's
now,
amazing. So what are some tips that you would give us, Girish?
and especially tips for the parents who have already, like some of us we've already gone beyond the 8 years and we are now maybe in the 15th year or 16th year, and we have made those imperfect parenting decisions throughout the parenting stages. What kind of tips would you give to those parents as well as the new parents?
Yeah. Now, I'll look from the child's perspective. No, what does a child want? Right? I'll give you 4 A's of parenting, 4 A's of effective parenting, you can call it. The first A is every child is looking for attention. Not only child, even adults, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
If somebody puts a post on Facebook, they just immediate how many likes I'm getting.
Correct.
If I'm like, I'm depressed, right? That means we are also seeking attention.
Correct.
So when a child is seeking attention, are we as parents giving attention to what the child is doing, or are we busy doing things that we want to do?
Absolutely.
Right? So number 1 is attention. Number 2 is appreciation for whatever good they do. See, these two are related, attention and appreciation. General human tendency is we take all the good things that they do for granted and we pinpoint only the wrong.
Yeah, correct. Correct.
And if you check into anybody's life from morning to night, every child is doing a lot of good things. But we are pointing only that one mistake.
We are only focusing on the negative. Yes, yes, correct.
So our attention is going to the negative and we are not appreciating the positive. So the negative will only increase.
Right.
Wherever your attention goes, energy goes and it repeats.
And there's a saying, right? What you appreciate, appreciates.
Exactly.
So appreciate and see the positive in the children in your life, that will grow. So it's just as simple as that. Yeah.
And when parents say, I don't know why my child is not listening, but why is he? No, I want him to change this behavior. So you need to give attention to what good behavior is doing and forget some things which he's not doing. So that will diminish automatically because your attention is not going there.
Because you're not focusing on it.
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely.
Right?
Okay.
Very nice. Yeah.
Attention, appreciation. Next is acceptance of the child, the way the child is. Right? Many parents have asked me, see, when one parent asked me, my child is going in the teenage, she's not tall. Can you tell me something so that I can make her do stretching exercise? Yes, why do you want her to do stretching exercise? He said, no, because she doesn't have even the average height. I asked, according to whom? Then he said, no, we have no certain average thing. Then I said, okay, the moment you start talking to your child that you need to do stretching exercises, the message that you are giving is, my father does not accept me the way I am.
You are not good enough.
Yeah.
No? Yeah. So true.
So
I actually, one quick example suddenly jumped to my mind and I was very upset, and my daughter was very upset at that too, is we had a family member who was looking, quote unquote, looking for girls to get married in the arranged marriage concept. And they were looking at the, what they send out, the bio data and all, and they focused on, oh, she's only 5'2". And my daughter, who is, in her 20s, got so angry because she was just like, what do you mean she's only 5'2"? What does that say about her at all? Her height, her physical height says nothing. And then I looked at her because my daughter's 5'9", and I looked at her and I said, was I any less because I'm 5'2"? And that kind of started the conversation. And that's what you're saying, is start the conversation, but also accept that you're enough just the way you are.
No, and also I think children are very sensitive, right? When we say something,
terrible to say,
you don't realize it, but like body shaming is one example, but you don't realize it, but our opinions and our words are very important in their mind, and they are listening to everything we are saying. Yes. So we have to be extremely careful about how we speak to our children, and acceptance will actually drive that. Yeah.
And even when at homes where you have 2 children, no?
Yeah.
There is a tendency to compare the children, no?
Yes.
Everyone used to listen so nice, used to not back answer, what are you doing?
What is wrong with you?
I've been guilty of that one.
So that's no, we allow them to be what they are. They are what they are.
Yes.
The moment you start seeing what they are, they will become what they are supposed to be.
Correct.
I think I have been in that position where I have compared and suddenly realized, you see the child's face fall, right? And you see their whole body language go down. And I remember at that point then trying to change myself and saying, yeah, you know, the older one used to listen very nicely and used to, was always afraid of quote unquote disobeying the parents and all. But you have your own personality, you want to question everything, and in questioning everything you're learning new things. So I kind of tried to improve on the mistake that I had made. But you're so right, because it does affect them very, very deeply.
And whatever comparison is, nobody can say that I'm beyond comparison or I do not compare. It is human nature. Only thing is, once we are aware, we reduce it.
Yes,
No,
yes.
it's human tendency to compare.
And that's where the imperfection comes in. No, Girish, if you do something wrong, go ahead and have that conversation with your kids. Ki, Baba, I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. Let's talk about it. What did you feel bad about? What did you know, what could mama or daddy have done differently?
Yes, yes, yes. And the final,
conversations.
the last A, no, the fourth A is affection, unconditional affection. In the sense, many of us withdraw our love and affection to our child based on something that they do. Okay, they didn't get good marks. 2 days, don't talk to them. Or you may impose a consequence, but if it is related to love and affection based on condition, that's the worst thing which can happen. Love and affection should be unconditional, because that is to the person, not to what they do.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
So these are the 4 A's which can help.
Beautiful, beautiful. So attention, appreciation, acceptance, and affection. My God, if we had really, we should have met you right when our children were really small, and we could have used this gyan, and we could have avoided so many battles that we had.
I did not know all these. I am also no.
Yeah, we're all learning, and that's exactly the reason why we wanted to do these series and invite people as amazing as you, Girish, because this is an important message that we need to give to our parents, that you know what, they have been born from your body, but they're not your property. You cannot be conditional. You cannot be doing a trade-off. You cannot love them conditionally. You have to give them unconditional attention, affection, appreciation, and acceptance, right?
Acceptance.
So that's really fantastic advice. I think we are done for today, and I can't believe that we had such an amazing conversation, Girish. Thank you so much for being on our show, and I hope that we can talk about other areas of parenting as well, because your advice is absolutely priceless.
Thank you so much. And
Spot on. Thank you.
Happy to be, even you have many more episodes coming in front.
Absolutely. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Girish. Thank you. Bye.